Welcome back. We're going to look at arrays some more. Let's begin by asking the question, when do you really need an array? You absolutely need an array when it is necessary to remember all the values that you have read in. A classic case of that is if you're told read in some values, then print them out in reverse order. Well, you cannot print out the first thing until you have read the last thing, and you cannot print out the last thing unless you remember the first thing. So let's take a look at a very simple solution to reversing three numbers. So it's pretty simple. Without arrays, I need three variables because there are three things to remember. I read in values for them, and I recall which is first, which is second, which is third. Then I display them in reverse order. That works okay if I have three. What if I have not three values, but say 7 values? What's required? Well, all of a sudden I see that the number of variables needed is growing. So I need 7 variables. I need to read them in, keep track of them, print them out in reverse order. Do you see where we're going? If I have 100 values, then how can I do this? Well, you certainly don't want to change this program every time you run it because the number of values changes. So instead, we want to solve it in a general way by using an array. So in this case, we need to have an array that can hold up to 100 things. At any given time, it may have fewer, and the variable num values will tell you how many you currently have stored. And now what does this program do? It says, tell me how many values you want to use, put those values into the array, and now we can reverse them by having a loop that generates the subscripts in reverse order. So if I have num values in the array, what's the subscript of the last thing? Recall from the last time, the subscript, if I had 10 things, the subscript of the last thing is not 10, but it's 10 minus 1. So I need subscripts starting at the number of values minus 1, and I want to count down to 0. All right? So let's run this real fast. Let's see what it looks like. Say I need 7 values, 6 values. I'm going to put the numbers in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I get the numbers in reverse order. Notice one thing that's very critical. With arrays, you have tremendous flexibility because now this program will work if I have one number. It can work if I have 95 numbers. But it will not work if I have 101 numbers. So that the only thing that is required is to just change the capacity of the array to increase its flexibility. Okay. Now let's go back to our spreadsheet. And I think many of you are familiar with spreadsheets and that I can do calculations. I can sum up these numbers by putting a formula in here. Let's look at the formula carefully. It says I want the sum starting at the second row through the 6th row. What does that mean in terms of C++? It kind of means that we want to add the first value, then the second value, then the third value, then the fourth value, then the fifth value, the sixth value. Okay? So what we see in the spreadsheet that looks like a sum, we know that in C++ we need a loop for. So let's take a look to see what this would look like. All right. So what do we have? We basically can load an array. We saw this before. We need a loop that generates the subscript 0 up to the number of values minus 1. And now we want to focus on this part where we're going to calculate the sum. And again, how do you calculate the sum? By adding each value one at a time to the sum. So we have the accumulator sum started at 0. Then we want to generate a subscript, okay? Notice that these subscripts are going backwards. It should not matter, but let's straighten this out. Ouch. Clean this up. Sorry. So to add all the values of the array, you add them one by one. And for that we need a for loop. The body of the for loop is about the business of accumulating the sum. So the only statement you need here is that. So let's go ahead and compile this. Let's run it. We'll put 4 values in there, and we'll just say 4, 3, 2, 1. And the sum is 10, which is right. 7 plus 2 is 9 plus 1 is 10. Okay. I think with that we'll just pull up here. Here's a reminder of what have we reminded ourselves of. An array gives you flexibility in the amount of data that you can handle. As long as the capacity is sufficiently large, you can handle problems of that size and smaller without changing the program at all. Certain problems that require you to remember all the inputs, you must store them. And an array is the best way to store them because the only alternative is to have a lot of values. And finally, the reminder about what an array is. It's really a single variable that can contain many values. With that, we'll stop.